Now, one of the four candidates seeking the Republican nomination in Connecticut's 5th congressional district. He's Mark Greenberg. He's from Litchfield. He owns a real estate company. And he says his business experience sets him apart from the others in the race. How so? How does that make you more qualified to be in Congress?
Well, I've been in business for 37 years, and it's very, very important to know what the people on the street, people on Main Street, people who are struggling to meet payroll, have to deal with every single day, especially the tax increases that you alluded to in the last piece. In Connecticut, we keep on getting tax increase upon tax increase, and then the effect of Obamacare coming up in January, when those increases are going to go into effect as well. So I've done it on a day-by-day basis for 35 years. It's something that congressmen have little interest in knowing. And there's little experience in Congress of people like me.
One of your opponents, Lisa Wilson-Foley, she has business experience.
Yes, she does. She does. I have 35 years of it.
Okay. Yeah. So more years of experience.
Well, the answer is we're both business people, and I applaud her for her business experience as well. We're in different fields. I'm in real estate, and she's in healthcare. You
mentioned the tax issues and the tax cuts. I mean, does a tax increase really affect the spending habits of someone who's a millionaire?
Well, it does. It really does. And it affects their decision as to whether they should hire new people, expand their business. It really does affect. And I think that it's very wrong to have tax increases for the so-called wealthiest who hire people, who take chances, who are entrepreneurial. And it's just not what this country is based upon. We need these people to take risk and to create jobs.
Congressman Murphy said that there's statistics and that back up that doesn't happen.
We all have statistics. I think it's very, very important that in this fragile economy, which is growing at a very small rate, that we not change anything. We do not let the Bush tax increases lapse, that we not let the payroll tax cut lapse. It's a fragile economy right now. We have to allow this economy to grow again, to recover from a 4-year doldrum, really, depression or doldrum. So we can't do anything to affect that and change that right now. We have to stay the course.
Although you are obviously running in the Republican primary, you've had a few things to say about the Democratic side. How do you think the whole situation will turn out with the FBI probe of Chris Donovan? I know you've been a little bit outspoken on that. How do you think that whole thing will play out? Well,
I really don't know. I'm not good at predicting politics. I'm good at business. Unfortunately, my political prognostications rarely come true. Months ago, I called for Chris Donovan to step down because it was my belief that he knew or should have known what was going on in his campaign. When I was getting campaign contributions, when I was actively soliciting for funds, I knew every max donor. I called them up on the phone. I had breakfast for them. I tried to find out who else would be a max donor. So to me, it seems somewhat incredible that he didn't have some knowledge about this. But that's only my opinion.
You've also said that you have obviously the former Governor John Rowland is now being investigated. The FBI believes that he was being paid through Lisa Wilson-Foley's husband's business when he was actually doing work for her. And you have recounted a story saying that he offered the same thing. Tell us exactly what he offered.
Well, that's part of an ongoing investigation. I really don't want to go into it in specific detail. Some of it has already come out in the media, and we'll see how that plays out. So I'd like to just leave that alone.
Okay. Well, have you been asked not to talk about that, have you been asked by any investigators not to talk about that, or that's your own personal decision?
Well, both probably, yeah.
I want to ask you about Obamacare. How specifically, if it stays the way it is it going to affect your business?
How's it affect my business?
Yes.
Well, I have some businesses, and we'd be subject to the Obamacare and the increased taxes. It affects my business because in this economy, something that affects one business, which might be different from the real estate business, affects my tenants who pay me rent. Perhaps they have to make a decision that they can't afford to have another person in their ice cream shop or in whatever their business is. So when you have one tax, it affects everything. It's a big circle in the economy. That's the way it works. Unfortunately, when the folks do their analyses of these taxes, they do them in a static fashion, not a dynamic fashion. That never works. Because it seems to me that in government, when you do one thing, something else happens that you don't expect to happen. That's what happens when the government gets involved in these big programs.
Is that Is that the biggest issue that people are asking you on the street?
It has become the most important issue. We've made over 16,000 calls to registered Republicans as part of our campaign. It has leapt to the most important issue, 3 or 4 points above government spending and jobs.
Has it gone up since the Supreme Court decision?
Directly from that point.
Related to that.
Yes, because people are
What
angry
are they saying about that decision?
Well, they don't know how it's going to affect them. They don't know what the 2,700 pages are going to mean to them. They're scared. They're nervous. They have their own coverage right now through their own insurance company, and they're comfortable with what they have. They don't want to change. People need to have security and stability, especially in the economy.
Is it fear because it's the unknown? They don't know
Al,
what
I think you're
getting?
absolutely right.
But it's not going to affect those people who already have their coverage, right?
It's fear of the unknown. People don't know what the 2,700 pages
So is it
say.
there hasn't been a good enough job done of communicating what it's all about?
I think that's part of it, frankly. I mean, when Nancy Pelosi says we have to pass it before we know what's in it, I think that's a problem. I think any bill that's 2,700 pages long is a problem. And I think it's been shown in the past
Just
that...
on its face, because it's 2,700
Well,
pages.
very much so.
Yeah.
You know, I'm against any bill that's 2,700 pages long. I've said that many times. I think generally when the federal government takes over things that they don't belong in, it becomes a bad program. It becomes a boondoggle. We have historical evidence for that, plenty.
Andrew Rohrabaugh in your race was the party's endorsed candidate at the convention. What would you say is the biggest difference between you and Andrew Rohrabaugh? Obviously, you've got the 35 years of business experience that you're talking about, but either on policy or otherwise, what's the biggest contrast between you?
Well, you know, I know Andrew Rohrabaugh very well. I've known him for 25 years since he got out of college. I see him at the Dunkin' Donuts at the plaza that I own in Litchfield all the time. Speak to him all the time. I like him. I think he's a great guy. Except I think Andrew has been in government for too long, you might say. And one time I asked him, you've voted on 8,300 consecutive bills. That's laudable to a certain extent, but didn't you want to go to your kid's birthday? Go to an engagement party? You know, he's just too much of a career politician.
He works too hard.
He works very hard. He's an honest guy, and I like Andrew very much. But I think our policies are different. I think that he's much more liberal than I am. You know, I wish him the best, but I think that I'm better qualified because of my business experience and my term limits, my desire not to take a congressional pension, and my desire to abide by the very same laws that we pass.
Mark Greenberg, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thanks.
And
Don't forget, if you missed something here on The Real Story, you can now watch it online by going to ctnow.com. You can also catch us on YouTube.
Thanks for watching this week's edition of The Real Story. We'll be here again next week at the same time.